Richard Branson knew he was an entrepreneur long before he knew what the word meant. In fact, words were a problem for him in school because he was dyslexic. As Branson describes it, he was an inattentive and troublesome student, but after dropping out, the first thing he did was start a business. Sir Richard Branson went on to build a multi-billion-dollar empire, from Virgin Records to Virgin Airlines, including Virgin America, also mobile phones, hotels, trains, even space travel. And he writes books of advice. The latest, Like a Virgin, Secrets They Won't Teach You at Business School, brought him into our studios in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining us.
Great pleasure.
So I'm going to actually start with the dyslexia part, which you speak of in the introduction in your book. But the reason I'm curious about it is that there has actually been a study which shows entrepreneurs have a disproportionate number of dyslexics in their ranks. So I'm just curious, do you think in a strange way that turned out to be good for you?
I think so. I think by being dyslexic, I simplify everything. I calculate everything on the back of an envelope, and if it makes sense, I'll do it, and if it doesn't make sense, I won't. So I don't overcomplicate it. And I mean, I'll just give you one amusing story. I was having a board meeting, and somebody gave me some figures, and I said, "Well, is that good news or bad news?" And the director said, "Richard, I don't think you know the difference between net and gross." And I owned up, I don't. and,
wow.
and so he pulled out a piece of paper, and he penciled in the sea, and then he penciled in a fishing net in the sea, and he said, "Well, you know, the fish that are in that net, that's your profit at the end of the year, and what's outside is your turnover." Sadly, I actually thought it was the other way around. I thought we were doing much better than we were, but I suppose the interesting point about all that is it doesn't matter, too much whether I mean, it's useful to be able to add up and subtract and maybe multiply, and apart from that, you can create an empire with 60,000 employees and find other people to add up the numbers at the end of the year.
But I do wonder, Virgin America has received kudos for its performance. People do speak of it lovingly. But that's in contrast to some of the older domestic airlines here in the U.S., and they're burdened with legacy costs like pensions and older aging fleets. So were you weighted down with the sorts of things that these legacy airlines have been weighted down with in recent years? Do you think you could have pulled that off?
I think if a company's got a great manager at the top, then they can get these issues sorted out. I mean, it's strange because in America you've got fantastic hotels, great restaurants, but the airline industry just has not gone out to make sure that every single person who flies on those planes get a wonderful experience. And the good thing about that is, that leaves room, for an airline like Virgin America to emerge. And we did the same thing with Virgin Atlantic when we started 30 years ago with one plane against British Airways. And the difference there is that actually British Airways did react, and they did start copying what we were doing, and they did improve their game. Fortunately, not as much as Virgin Atlantic, but they did improve their game. And so because you've got legacy things hanging over you, it doesn't mean that you can't get your act together.
Well, then I'd be curious about one business question that's come up in recent days. American Airlines, it's been in bankruptcy for nearly a year, and there's speculation that it might be bought or merge. What about Virgin? Are you interested?
We don't normally buy other companies or merge with other companies because you take on a lot of history. Having said that, it would be quite fun to do something with American Airlines. So, if anybody from American Airlines is listening, we'd be happy to get your call.
One chapter in your book is called Change is in the Air, Jetting to Sustainability. Tell us some main ways in which an airline, which would seem to have the hugest carbon footprint, can change that and make a difference.
Well, look, I mean, about 3 or 4 years ago at the Clinton Global Initiative, I pledged that 100% of any profits we made from our airline businesses, we would invest in alternative fuels. And what we've been trying to do is come up with a fuel that we can power our planes by that emits no carbon.
And you expect that to become a reality how soon?
I would hope that there would be enough fuel produced that most Virgin planes in 4 or 5 years' time would be flying on clean fuels.
That is something that I think nobody would have really thought possible even just a few years ago.
When we did the first test flight on coconut oil, there was a lot of jokes made. But, the most important thing in life is just to try these things. And we tried it. Now we've got engineers and technicians all over the world working on it. It will be a reality.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for your interest.
Richard Branson's latest book is Like a Virgin: Secrets They Won't Teach You at Business School.